me start off, Dr. Rajan, you say these are dangerous times, and you point specifically to the rise in populism. At the same time, your book is full of historical anecdotes where the populism affected positive change.
Absolutely.
So which way are we going here? Are you optimistic or pessimistic given the current populist movement that things are going to work out for the better or for the worse?
Well, I think one of the things we have to recognize is how important democracy is for the sustainability of capitalism. Democratic movements, time and again, the populists you talked about in the 19th century, were very useful in setting the course of capitalism right to make sure that it worked for all rather than just for a few. I think we're seeing that movement again. Unfortunately, the problem is it needs to be channeled in the right direction, in broadening opportunity. Sometimes it goes off track. Sometimes populism can go towards reducing some of the benefits of capitalism. Let's tax the rich.
I mean, let me cut you off because we are right there right now. We have a far left of the Democratic Party that wants to, has a lean towards socialism. We've got a far right of the Republican Party that wants to tear up the global trade rules, right? And these are times when it could go either way. And I think it's important that your book is about sort of saving capitalism, that if we don't make these changes.
And I would add to that, I'm curious what you learned from your experience in India about that, especially as it relates to China, and people say, you know, it's coercive capitalism.
Yeah, I think some of the problems translate to emerging markets also. People have to sense that they have a chance in the capitalist system. And when they sense they don't have a chance, they want to shut it down. And I think one of the dangers at this time is precisely that, whether you're coming from the left or you're coming from the right, you're seeing the markets aren't working for you. And therefore, you want to constrain the markets. Now, we have to make sure that first, they have better opportunities. And that's where the focus of the book, that these communities which are declining, where people don't feel they have a chance, we have to focus on reviving them. And that means targeting them rather than the broad country.
There's one fact that's important. We have a chart on this. It's the declining growth of middle-class jobs, right? Low-wage jobs are rising, high-wage jobs are rising, but middle-class jobs or middle-wage jobs, those are the ones that are really, in some cases, either declining or not growing as much.
Absolutely. But it's not just the fact that they're not growing, it's where they're not growing. They're not growing in rural, semi-urban areas. That's why you have the protests in France. That's why you have the protests in the United States.
All right, we got about 3 minutes now, right? Or maybe even less. We got to fix all this stuff.
and as you're fixing it, I want to ask you about the Fed abandoning maybe its 2% inflation target.
So
I mean, that actually, can I jump in on that one?
Absolutely.
What do you think about this idea that inflation in the U.S. is too low and that the central bank needs to do something to try to convince the rest of us? Because it's some kind of problem that we think we're only going to be having 1.5% inflation instead of 2 or something.
Well, I think the Fed is justified in saying it wants to be symmetric around the 2% target. So it wants to perhaps run the economy a little hot because we've been running a little less than 2% for some time. That said, I think I wouldn't argue that it's abandoning an inflation target. It's really being equal on both sides. For the moment, it seems like it is going to tolerate a little more inflation.
I just don't know how it'll work. How do you, and Steve, I'm curious what you think about this as well. So, again, it's not really problematic what people think about it now. Okay, so they're at 1.5%, 1.3%. People don't think prices are going negative. How do you try to tailor that so that people think, oh, it's going to be 2.2 or 2.5%? Right? I don't understand.
My 2 cents on this: if you want an issue that critics and opponents of the Fed are going to demagogue, the idea that they want higher inflation, that they want the cost of living to go up more, that is something the Fed is going to be very reluctant to do. And I think Jay Powell, the Fed chairman, has a pretty good political ear, and I think he's not going to touch that with a 2.5% to 3% inflation poll.
My sense is they'll stay with their 2%. They'll just say we're a little tolerant if it goes a little above.
Right.
So they're not abandoning the target in any way, and they don't have to defend that.
Let's not lose the opportunity to talk about trade, because underlying all of this is the effect of trade on jobs. And the old saw is that trade is something that helps everybody but hurts people very acutely in specific areas. Is there an easy solution? Is there some way that we can keep the world global and yet not leave all these people behind?
Well, we need to increase their ability to take advantage of opportunity. The wrong solution for the industrial countries right now, as their populations age, is to shut off trade, because where are the other markets going to be? They're going to be in the rest of the world. They're not going to be here. So you need to keep trade open. And second, the wrong answer, again, is to shut off immigration totally, because these populations are aging. Just look at Japan. So much capital now going unused because their labor force is shrinking. They can't use it because they don't have that immigration.
So that would be my last quick question to you. More and more people are talking, even Warren Buffett this morning, comparing the U.S. to Japan. Is that a fair comparison, an apt one?
It is fair because Japan is the future if we follow the same path that they followed. And we have to think about that. We have a much younger population because we allowed immigration. So let's think about how we get effective immigration rather than say the answer is let's shut it off.
All right, Raghu, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure.